Hi guys, and welcome back to a YouTube tutorial on how to create a portal in Adobe PhotoShop. In this tutorial, I'll go through how to get from this to this within half an hour. So let's get started. So if you go into the link below, what you will find are 3 images that you can use to create a portal just like this in Adobe PhotoShop. I've got myself this background image, as you can see here, and what I will be doing is be creating a portal just about here. If you go onto my Instagram account, Photography by Fever, you will be able to see this as I placed this as my 31 days of colour, and this was Mystic Orange. But let's go ahead to the tutorial. First, what you want to do is have a background image. Now you can choose the one that I've got selected here, or you can take one of yourself. Now once you've gone to my website and downloaded the 3 images, the first thing you want to do is load up Adobe PhotoShop. Now as you can see here, I've already uploaded the photo that I'm going to choose. Now if we go to the layers panel, as you can see, I've set this as my background layer, and we can see this by opening up the layers panel. Now we need to choose whereabouts we would like the portal to be, and also what size. So if we go to our downloaded images and we drag over, and this will be the very first portal section here. Now this is predominantly where the portal will be. Now as you can see, obviously it's all black. So what we want to do is go to the portal, make sure the layer is selected. We can see this in the layers panel. And what we want to do is go to the blending mode you can see here. Now at the moment it's on normal. As you can see, it's predominantly black. But what we can do is we train this to screen. As you can see, the black disappears, but the portal stays in place. Now what screen does is basically every single one of the pixels is found here will be turned to lighten. So what it does is it lightens all of the photos. Now if the colour is black, it will turn transparent, and if the colour is white, what it will do is it will try and lighten the image below. Now as you can see here, all the black has completely disappeared because obviously black doesn't lighten anything, and the portal has stayed in place. Now this is where we want to make the size of the portal. So if we go Command T, or if we go into our edit panel up here, what we can do is it comes up with this box tool. Now what we want to do is move around and try and find the right size of the portal, or the right placement. So we go around here, we just use the arrow tools, and what we could do is just make it ever so slightly larger, and I think that's probably where I'd like it in the image. But obviously the image that you've chosen will hopefully be different, and we'll go from, you'll choose it on there. So as you can see, we've got the portal here and we've got it on screen. Now as you can see, it is still a little bit, so if we turn it on and off, as you can see, it's lightening up around the corners. Now the way we can remove that is if we go down to the bottom right hand corner, as you can see on the screen, we can go to our adjustment layers panel. Now what we want to do is select curves. Now when we select curves, if you guys used curves before, is basically it brings up a histogram, and we can adjust the line to either lighten or darken certain areas of the image. Now if we hold down Alt and in between the 2 layers that we go into the layers panel, if we click, what it will do is it will just apply that curves layer to the layer below, and not affecting any other layer. Now this is very important because we don't want the background image to change colour. Select the layer below, and so we can actually see the histogram of the portal. Now as you can see, obviously it's very dark, hence the black background, and it obviously fades to white. So what we want to do is to get rid of the haziness. What we want to do is take the black layer here and drag it to the right hand side. So as you can see, it's getting lighter, it's getting darker and darker, so we want to try and have it around here, just so we don't get rid of any of the glow, but we get rid of the kind of haziness that we do around the edges. So that's about the size of the portal we want to do here, and the next thing we want to do is bring in the ellipse layer. So if we drag the ellipse layer, you can download that from my website, and we place it in place. Now again, what we want to do is do the exact same thing that we did to our layer below the portal. So we want to go make sure it's selected in your layers panel, and we want to drop it below and go to screen. Now as you can see, it's placed it in place, and what we want to do is Command T, or if we go to the edits panel here, what we want to do is free transform. So it's Command T or as your shortcut, and basically make it the same size as the portal. So if we place it in here, it's about the right size. We can zoom in a little bit just to make sure. Now this is very important, this part, as this is what defines the edge of the portal. So I think we're happy with that. So as you can see, we've got the edge of the portal here, and it's kind of created that elliptical shape. So we've got the shape of the portal here, but as you can see, there's a lot of haziness and grain below here. Now this is part of the portal layer. So what we want to do is go down here. It looks like a square in a circle. This is your layer mask selection. So if we click on the portal layer to make a layer mask. Now what we want to do is, if you press either G on your keyboard, or what we can do is go to our gradients panel. Now what we want to do is create a layer mask gradient. So we make sure that we've got the layer here, make sure it's on linear gradient. And basically you want to drag or hold down Shift and click, and basically drag up on the layer of your portal. And what you want to do is get rid of this kind of reflection on the ground. Don't want to get rid of it completely, but we just want to make sure there are no harsh lines. And then what we want to do is go to our ellipse layer and then do the same thing. So what it does, it just gets rid of all of that kind of area around the bottom here, because we don't really want any of that kind of effect on your subject. So if we just remove it there, and as you can see, we've created two layer masks that are all very similar. So now we've got the portal in place. What we're going to do is start to remove sections of the portal that won't be visible within the image. Now as you can see, the subject here obviously wouldn't have the portal, as the subject is in the foreground and the portal is in the background. So what we want to do is to create a path around the area that won't be necessarily affected. So what we can do is we can either do P on your keyboard, or we can press P on the left hand section here, and we want to go around the area that won't necessarily have the portal in place. So if we start here, and basically what you want to do is draw a line around the subject or the area of the foreground that you do not want the image to be part of. So this is where the portal won't be affected. Okay guys, so once you've finished your path, we can save it by finishing off the path. We go to our paths layer on the left hand side, and what we want to do is double click and save it as a path. Now once we've done that, if we do hold down Control or Apple on your keyboard and we click on the layer, what we do is we get these marching ants up, and basically what this turns it into is it selects the pixels that we would like to on the layer. Now what we want to do is have the portal behind the foreground. Now what we need to do that is we need to create a new layer of the background. So if we go down to, if we basically hold and drag it over this little paper icon, what it does is it duplicates the layer. So if we drag the layer above all of the other layers, and then basically go to your select panel, and we go to modify and feather. Now no background or to foreground is going to be 100% sharp. So we want to add a little bit of feather just so it doesn't look too unnatural. Now you can range it between 1 to 100 pixels, but realistically a sharp in focus image is between 1 to 5 pixels. So what we want to do is have a look at the image closer up and kind of see what level of feather you will need. The blurrier the feather, the blurrier the photo, the more blurry you will need when you apply your feather selection. Now this image is quite in focus, so what we want to do is add in probably 1 or 2. So I'm going to select 1 there and maybe add in a little bit of feather later on. So what we need to do that is press OK, and then go down to your layer mask and select the new layer. Now you'll notice nothing has changed, but that's because we turned off the portal. If we turn back on the portal again, as you can see, the portal has now formed behind the subject, making it look like it's in the background. So once we've done this, the areas we've got to now focus on is light. Now, if we treat this portal as a source of light, everything around it would be glowing, very similar to when the light from the sun shines down, it casts a shadow. So what we've got to do is add in light sourcing and shadows to make more of an effect on the Photoshop, to make it look more realistic. Now the ways we can do this, there's multiple ways of doing this, but I'll show you the way that I do it, and I think it's the way that makes it look the best. But again, everyone's got different ways of working. My first port of call is to go to the ellipse layer. Now what we want to do is create an area of light that will lighten the areas that would be kind of glowing because of the portal. So what we're going to do is, if you hold down Alt, what we can do is, you can see we can create an ellipse that is perfect to the shape of the portal, or the way the portal light would be. So if we add in a portal there, as you can see, it creates this kind of black circle, which is perfect. So as we create a black circle, it's called Ellipse 1. We have a look, you can see here on the layers panel. Obviously what we want to do is have this layer below the subject. So all we have to do is drag and just drop it below the subject. But also we want to drop it below the portal as well. So we want to drag it almost all the way to the bottom. So once we've placed it here, what we'll do is we'll need to start adding in colour. So what we want to do is, if you right click on your mouse, it will pop up with this panel here. We want to go to rasterize layer. Now what that basically means is it turns it from a smart object into pixels. Obviously a smart object would be helpful, but in this case we don't need it. So we've got this ellipse layer selected here, and now we need to choose the right colour. So if you go to the left panel here, you've got your fill and you've got your background layer. If we double click the fill layer, it comes up with this colour picker. Now what we want to do is try and find the best colour for the portal glow. Now obviously we've already got a colour for the portal, as we've brought it in from a new photo, so we need to kind of select that colour. So if you just hover over the area that you want, you can see as you select it, the portal creates a new colour. So we want to kind of select a colour that is kind of the best. So if we go for more of an orangey kind of colour, so if we select this colour here, I think would be perfect. Now once we've selected that, we want to go and we want to make sure that we only, when we paint in the colour, we want to make sure it only affects the ellipse. So if we go to this lock selection here, as you can see, and basically it will lock transparent pixels. What this will do, it will only paint the pixels that have got colour or a certain transparency on them. What it won't do is it won't paint on photo, or it won't paint on anything that is completely transparent, which is perfect for what we're after. So if we go to the brush tool, or if you press B on your keyboard, basically come up with the brush tool, and we want to paint in the colour to our ellipse here. So we've got painted that, and the ellipse is added in the glow, which is perfect. So now we want to unlock the layer, so all we have to do is go over here and click the lock button, and now we want to add in feather. Now obviously this is way too harsh, this particular ellipse we've got here, so we need to start kind of feathering out the edges. Now there's multiple ways of doing this, but my way is, if we go up to filter here, we go to blur, and we go to Gaussian blur. Now Gaussian blur basically blurs every single pixel in that shape to whatever pixel radius you've chosen. The small amount of pixels that you select will create a very fine blur, and the larger number of pixels that you select will create a very strong blur. Now with this particular one, we want light to be quite strong, so we want quite a high number. So anything between maybe 50 to 100. Anything more than that, you might see that the actual shape disappears because you've blurred it to a point where it starts to become transparent. But I find 50 for this particular one here works perfect. Obviously we can move it around, so if you can see we've added more, adds more blur. If we add less, adds less blur. But around 50 pixels for this particular image I think works best. And as you can see, it's placed in here. Now obviously it's a bit too sharp at this point in time. The colour is a bit too strong. Now we can either lower the opacity, or we can choose a different blending mode. So we go to our blending mode. You can actually, if you've downloaded 2019, you can actually flick through and see which blending mode works best. They're all split up into different categories. So these ones are darken. This section here is lighten. This section here overlays colour onto the background. This layer subtracts or diffuse or divides, and this colour changes luminosity and colour. But the area that we want to probably look over is the lighten area, because we don't want to necessarily change the colour, but we just want to kind of brighten up the areas that would kind of be glowing. Now I find hard light seems to work best. So what we can do is we've selected hard light, if we zoom out, and then basically what we want to do is go to our opacity and lower the opacity. As we can see here, this section of the ellipse is actually missing. Now that's because the foreground layer is actually hiding it behind the layer mask. Now the way we can fix that is by going into our brush tool and basically removing the area that we want. And as you can see, we are revealing it here. So once you've fixed the foreground layer, what you can do is basically zoom out and see how it looks. Now I find this is a little bit too harsh still. So if we go into our layers panel, and basically this is where you can have a look and basically scan through all the different type of blending modes and finding the right one that you think works best. So this is where I'm just going to go through now and just have a look. Now on second thought, I think lighten seems to work best. It seems to keep the best colour for the background. So once we've added in the eclipse and the glow, what we need to have a look now is the rest of the image. Now because I shot this image in the daytime using aperture priority, it is because I've made the image bright. But because obviously the portal, we need to make sure that it's kind of more of a darker theme. So the way that we can change this is by going into your adjustment layers and either choosing brightness and contrast, levels, curves or exposure. I will be choosing curves as I find it's the best way of changing the image. So we go into our curves and it brings up the histogram. What we probably want to do is darken the image. So if you drag downwards, it will brighten. If you drag the line upwards, it will lighten. So obviously if we want to start darkening the image, we can do that as such as this. Once we've chosen the right kind of effect that you'd like, we can click off this now. Now we could be happy with this, but I still want to be adding in a certain amount of kind of glow from the tree that you see on the right here and the tree that you've got in the background. Now again, what we can do is repeat what we've done with the ellipse on the floor, but I've got a different technique which I think works just as well. So again, what we do is we go to our adjustment layers here and we select curves again. Now with curves, you've got your RGB selection here, but you can actually split it down into 3 different channels. So you've got the red channel, you've got the green channel, and you've got the blue channel. Now each one of these is obviously red, green and blue, which is how photos are created in the camera. Obviously red is just the red section, and once you've laid them all over, it turns into a full colour image. Now the areas obviously we want to change, or we want to brighten, are the red channels. So if we can experiment with this at home, but basically if you drag up the red, as you can see, everything, the reds are increased instead of the greens and blues, and then if you remove them, basically it removes red and keeps the green and blue. So as you see, it's gone. If you remove red, it adds in quite a lot of cyan. Now what we want to be doing here is just adding in the kind of orangey, yellowy glow that the portal creates. So we've got to try and replicate that in the curves layer. So what we want to do is probably go to our red channel and basically boost up the reds, and then what we want to do is go to our blue channel and we want to decrease the blues. Decreasing the blues adds in yellow. So if we decrease the blues here, we get this kind of very nice kind of yellowy tinge to the photo. And then we want to go to our RGB selection, which obviously brightens or darkens the image, and we want to brighten that as well. So what we've done is we've brightened the image, and obviously all of it at the moment is very, very orange. So what we want to do here is if we go press Command I or we can invert the selection, this is what you're after to do, and turn everything to black. Now what we want to do is use that kind of effect here and paint in the sections that would be adding in extra glow. So if we zoom into the section on the right here, what we want to do is kind of paint in that area of glow that would have been caused by the portal. Now once you've added in the glow, what you want to do is just refine the edges to make sure that the glow looks absolutely how you would like it. You can always go in and out of the curves layer to either brighten or darken after the fact. That's what's quite good about using adjustment layers, and then you can also go into the layer mask and add and remove sections as well. This is what's quite good about working in the way that I do. It's just so you can add and remove as you go along. Nothing is ever set in stone. And basically we go through the same process again as we did for the previous curves layer, and basically try and replicate the orange glow that you would get off of the portal. So once we've added in the glow here, what we can do now is start adding in certain tones that we want to have the image reflect. Now we can either do this by using a curves layer, or we can actually use a color pick tool. So if we go here, we can go to our color lookup selection. Now we use this in my previous tutorial, and I'm sure I'll make a tutorial in the future on how to use this. But basically what we've got is a bunch of presets that you'll find already loaded into your computer of different ways that we can have the image. Now certain colors work for, certain color lookups work for different sets. So, but obviously this one we want to go for an orangey tone. So I find the best one for kind of an orange is we've got this full colour here. Now this is called full colours, and basically obviously it's trying to replicate kind of autumn season. Now this is obviously a little bit too harsh for this image, so we can either use the fill or the opacity, and basically either reduce or increase depending on what type of style that you're going for. I'm probably going to reduce it to around 60%. And there we go guys, a very simple tutorial on how to create a portal in Adobe PhotoShop. Again, if you want any of the links or photos that I used within this tutorial, you can go to the link down below. This will take you to my website where I will be daily uploading the photos that I'll be using in this tutorial. And again, if you like this tutorial, you can like and subscribe to the channel for further updates to tips and tricks of Photoshop surrounding surrealism photography. And if you've got anything else to add, you can add it in the comments. But until next time guys, keep creating.